welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something really fundamental, something that kind of sits around your project, but, well, it dictates so much of its success or failure. We're talking about the business environment.
Exactly. And we're diving deep using the PMP Domain 03 framework, looking right at the source materials you've got here.
Yeah, and think of this not just as, abstract theory. Understanding this environment is absolutely key to project success. It's the context.
It really is. It's about knowing the landscape, the rules, the pressures, both inside and outside the project. That's how you navigate successfully and, crucially, deliver something that actually has value.
So our goal today is to unpack the four main areas in this domain. We want to pull out the practical insights, the important bits from the sources for you.
Right. We'll look at planning and managing project compliance first, then evaluating and delivering project benefits and value.
Then we'll tackle those, sometimes unpredictable external business environment changes.
And finally, how your project fits into and supports the wider organizational change. Sound good?
Sounds great. Okay, let's unpack that first big piece then. Project compliance. What exactly are we talking about here?
Well, at its core, compliance is basically making sure everything you do on the project, the activities, the tasks, and the final outcome itself lines up with all the necessary standards. Legal, regulatory, maybe even internal ones.
It's non-negotiable, really.
Pretty much.
And these requirements, they don't all come from the same place, do they? The sources point out they can be internal, like your company's own policies or product quality standards.
Exactly. Or they can be external things like government regulations, industry rules, that sort of thing.
Right. And who's responsible? It's not just the project manager, is it?
No, definitely not. The sources are clear it's a shared responsibility. The PM, sure, but also the whole project team. And often in bigger organizations or regulated industries, you'll have a PMO, a project management office, or even a dedicated compliance department involved.
Okay, so specific examples might be things like adhering to specific industry standards or dealing with privacy laws like GDPR if you handle customer data, right?
Yeah, or just ensuring sensitive information is handled correctly. All part of it.
Now, here's where the sources get quite detailed. Compliance isn't just one big thing. They break it down into categories.
Yeah, they list things like environmental risk, how the project impacts the environment, social responsibility, the broader societal effects, quality, obviously.
Ethical and non-corrupt practices, too.
Right, and workplace health and safety, keeping people safe. And what's interesting is how much these can vary. Depends on the country, the industry, specific local rules.
That variety means you've got to be proactive, asking questions early. The sources suggest identifying potential threats by asking things like, who is the compliance lead here?
Yeah, or what specific regulations must we follow? What are our own company policies on quality?
And maybe the big one. Are we, the team and stakeholders, actually aware of all this stuff?
You got it. And a really key takeaway from the material, maybe one of the most important points, is to treat compliance as a project objective in itself.
Like right up there with scope, time, and cost.
Exactly. The sources actually highlight non-compliance as potentially one of the most serious risks a project can face.
Wow.
Yeah, serious enough that it might even deserve the highest priority on your risk register.
Okay, the highest priority. That really lands the importance. So if it's that critical, what tools do the sources suggest for managing it?
Well, they mention the usual quality management things, audits, tracking, validation processes, but they specifically call out using a risk register proactively, or maybe even a dedicated compliance register.
Okay.
And you'd track the specific risk, assign someone to own it, figure out the potential impact, and plan your response. Avoid, transfer, mitigate, accept.
Standard risk response.
Right. But the key is continuous validation. Keep checking throughout the project and do a final check before closing out. Make sure nothing slips through.
So for you listening, ignoring compliance, the sources make it clear that's not cutting corners. It's inviting potentially huge legal and financial trouble for your project. That high priority makes a lot of sense.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. If compliance is about avoiding the bad stuff, this next section is about making sure you deliver the good stuff. How do projects actually deliver value and benefits? How do they meet stakeholder expectations?
Right. The sources outline a kind of process here. It starts with investigating, identifying what those potential benefits actually are. Then it's really important to document who's going to own realizing those benefits after the project ends, because value often shows up later.
Absolutely. It's not always immediate at handover.
So you need systems to track the benefits, figure out how you'll demonstrate the value created, and, critically, Keep stakeholders in the loop on progress towards that value.
And when the sources talk about business value, they define it pretty broadly. It's not just money.
No.
No, it includes improvements to products, services, maybe other things that don't show up directly on a profit and loss statement.
Okay. They break down the components of value, too. First, employee knowledge, which they flag as an often overlooked asset. Yeah. Then customer value, what the customer actually gets.
Yeah.
And channel partner value, the benefit gained from working with partners.
Then there are the different types of value listed. Financial gain is the obvious one.
Sure.
But also things like being first to market, getting that competitive advantage, gaining new customers, making improvements, tech improvements, process efficiencies, operational gains.
Social benefit is in there, too.
Right. Positive impact on community or environment. And regularization, which kind of links back to compliance, delivering value by aligning with standards.
Man, even before you get to a business case, the sources mentioned this business need assessment step.
Yes. That's about gathering the initial data for planning, often done by a business analyst. It looks at the high-level goals, the problems, the opportunities.
And it leads to recommendations for potential solutions.
Exactly. And that work then feeds into key business documents. The business case is critical. It justifies the project, outlines objectives, links to business goals, sets boundaries, includes cost-benefit analysis, the need, quality expectations, high-level constraints.
And accepting that business case is usually what triggers the project charter.
Correct. The other key document mentioned is the benefits management plan. The sources say this is actually part of the overall project management plan.
Oh, right.
And it details how those benefits we talked about will be managed, measured, and tracked over time.
Now, switching to Agile for a moment, the idea of incremental value delivery is huge there.
Absolutely central. The sources explain it lets you get value to customers faster. That can mean higher satisfaction, maybe grabbing market share.
And you get to release parts of the solution early, get feedback, and make adjustments. You don't wait until the very end to find out if you missed the mark.
Precisely. It avoids that big bang risk.
The sources also give us specific ways to measure benefit and value, concrete tools.
There's IRR, internal rate of return, good for comparing potential projects. NPV, net present value, which accounts for the time value of money. $1 today is worth more than $1 next year.
Right, inflation, opportunity cost.
Exactly. Then payback period, PBP, how long it takes to recoup the initial investment. And ROI, return on investment, the classic profitability ratio, usually a percentage.
They also bring up OKR's objectives and key results.
Yeah.
A structured way to set and track goals.
Yeah, pretty popular framework. And OKR is just that, an objective plus its key results. The objective is the big goal, clear, inspiring.
And the key results.
Those are the specific, measurable outcomes that show you're making progress towards that objective, how you know you're getting there.
So how do they work in practice?
Well, you set clear objectives. Identify, say, 3 to 5 measurable key results for each. Make sure they line up with the bigger organizational mission. And then, crucially, you track progress regularly and adjust course based on the data.
The sources give some best practices, too, like aiming for about 70% success on key results.
Yeah, the idea being if you hit 100% all the time, maybe your goals weren't ambitious enough. Stretch goals.
Right, and writing OKRs that are action-oriented, inspirational, but also concrete and measurable.
Exactly. So for you managing projects, really understanding what value means in your specific context, financial, knowledge, social, whatever, and then actively managing towards delivering it using these kinds of methods, well, that ensures your project isn't just busy, it's actually achieving something worthwhile.
Okay, let's look outwards now. The business environment, it's definitely not static, is it? This next section is all about how external changes can impact your project, even down to the scope.
Yeah, things happening outside your direct control. The sources say the key tasks here are, first, keeping an eye out, surveying changes in that external environment.
Like new regulations, tech shifts, geopolitical stuff, market trends.
Exactly. Then you need to assess how those changes might hit your project scope or your backlog if you're agile.
And then recommend options for dealing with the impact, maybe changing the schedule, the budget.
Right. And this isn't a one-time thing. You need to keep reviewing the external environment constantly because it keeps changing.
The sources draw a contrast between the internal environment stuff inside your organization, like people, money, marketing, machinery, structure.
Your controllables, more or less.
And the external environment to those broader forces, economic, geographic, social, tech, political, cultural factors. Things you generally can't control, but have to react to.
And when significant changes happen, whether internal or external, you often need to update your project baselines. That process is called rebaselining.
Setting a new baseline.
Essentially, yes, creating a new reference point for your plan after approved changes are incorporated.
Which brings us neatly to change control. The sources stress having a change management plan, and a key part of that is often the Change Control Board, the CCB.
Right. The material describes the CCB as a group, usually key stakeholders, who evaluate change requests. They look at the impact, cost, risk, value before deciding.
And the decision-making, it's often tiered, isn't it?
Usually, yeah. The project manager might have authority for small changes, within certain limits. Anything bigger gets escalated.
To the sponsor, maybe a steering committee.
Exactly.
The sources outline a pretty standard change request process. It starts with meeting the stakeholder, logging the request,
Analyzing the impact on constraints, scope, cost, schedule, quality, risk.
informing stakeholders, sending it to the CCB, getting approval or rejection.
And if approved, updating all the plans and baselines, communicating the change, and finally implementing it. It's a formal loop.
Seems thorough. Now, what about Agile? How does it handle change?
Well, the sources point to backlog reprioritization as the kind of built-in change mechanism. The product backlog is designed to be flexible. New requirements or changes get added as user stories.
And the product owner plays a key role.
Absolutely central. They're responsible for identifying new stories and prioritizing the whole backlog based on value. Higher value items just move up the list for the team to tackle next.
Makes sense. And the product owner's duties, helping prioritize, being accountable for value, creating the vision, defining stories.
Providing guidance, defining acceptance criteria, answering team questions, giving feedback. It's a big role.
Briefly, how does release planning compare? Traditional versus Agile.
Traditional often aims for one big release at the end. Agile, as the sources note, usually has multiple smaller releases throughout the project, delivering high-value stuff early and often.
So for anyone running a project, being able to anticipate or at least react quickly to external changes, assess the impact, and have a solid process, whether it's formal change control or agile backlog management, that seems critical to staying on track in a world that keeps shifting.
Absolutely. Adaptability is key.
Okay, the final area. Supporting organizational change. Projects don't exist in a bubble, right? They often drive change or are affected by it.
Exactly. They're often the means of organizational change, where they have to navigate changes happening around them.
So the tasks here, according to the sources, involve assessing the organizational culture you're working in.
Evaluating how broader organizational changes might impact your project.
And also evaluating how your project might impact the organization and its people.
Yeah.
It goes both ways.
It does. And this connection is really vital in organization's culture, its style, its structure, whether it's functional, matrix, projectized.
Where the PM's authority level varies a lot.
Right. All that stuff heavily influences how projects get done. Understanding that context helps you align your project with how the company works, which boosts your chances of success.
So as a PM, you really need to kind of get a feel for that culture and identify the key players, the decision makers, the influencers.
Knowing who holds the power or sway is crucial for navigating the politics and getting things done.
What aspects of culture do the sources highlight as important to understand?
They mention things like how leadership and hierarchy are viewed, the shared vision and beliefs, DEI practices, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the organization's appetite for risk,
Regulations, policies, code of conduct.
operating environments, motivation, and reward system. It's a whole ecosystem that shapes how your project functions.
The sources also bring in a model for understanding change at the individual level, which is essential for organizational change, the AD-CAR model.
Yes, AD-CAR. It's an acronym. Awareness of the need for change, desire to support it, knowledge of how to change, ability to implement the new skills, and reinforcement to make it stick.
So it helps individuals move from the current state through the transition to the future state.
That's the idea. It recognizes that organizational change relies on individual change.
We also see different types of PMOs described.
Right. There's the directive PMO, high control, assigns PMs, projects report to it. The controlling PMO offers guidance, templates, maybe tracks compliance, but less direct authority.
And the supportive PMO.
More like an internal consultant. Provides resources, best practices, training, but low control over projects. They often manage standards, policies, templates, resources.
The sources offer some interesting scenarios too, like what if you're in an organization with no formal PMO or governance policies?
Yeah, the suggestion there is first, talk to the team and stakeholders. Is there any informal governance happening? Then choose a suitable framework, predictive or agile, and maybe get an expert in or coach the team on it.
Makes sense. Start where you are. What about planning an agile iteration when some features weren't finished last time? How do you prioritize?
The sources suggest balancing things. Weigh the cost of delaying the unfinished work against its business value, but also factor in external things like industry trends and the technical complexity. It's a multi-factor decision.
Okay. Another one? A government agency drops new standards impacting your project. You're doing a quality audit, already behind schedule and over budget. What's the primary focus?
According to the source in that specific context, the main focus should be ensuring the work aligns with company policies, processes, and procedures first. Meeting sponsor acceptance limits is secondary in that pressure cooker situation. Internal alignment is key for compliance.
Interesting prioritization under pressure. And finally, a project transforming an organization from functional to projectized. What are the likely results?
The sources say, the organization shifts structure, project managers gain control over budgets or managers. The source uses both terms, which is a slight nuance, and PMs definitely get significantly more authority over their projects.
Which fits the projectized model.
Generally, yes. More PM authority is characteristic.
So wrapping this section up, for you, leading projects, successfully navigating the human side, the culture, the structure, the impacts, both ways between project and organization is just as vital as managing the tasks and timelines.
Absolutely. It's the whole picture. So we've covered a lot there. The four main pillars from the sources on the business environment: compliance, delivering value, dealing with external changes, and supporting organizational change.
Yeah, quite a journey through that domain. And mastering these areas, as the sources really underline, isn't just about passing an exam. It's crucial for project managers to make sure projects are compliant, successful, and actually beneficial, not just technically done.
Couldn't agree more. It's about delivering real results in the real world.
So, given how fast everything changes, technology, markets, regulations, here's a final thought for you to ponder. Beyond just executing the plan you start with, how can you build practices into your project management approach to continuously understand and adapt to this ever-shifting business environment? How do you ensure your project stays relevant and valuable, not just at the finish line, but throughout its life and even beyond?
That's the ongoing challenge, isn't it? Constant vigilance and adaptation.